Well, doomsayers started saying last week that if Congress couldn't come up with a budget, those automatic cuts in spending would kick in, as they have, beginning this weekend, and among other things, lead to snarled air traffic, longer lines at airport security, check-in points. Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood said flights could be backed up as much as 90 minutes at some major airports. Heck, that's an average afternoon at JFK. Add another 90 minutes. Sean Kennedy is a senior vice president for global government affairs at Airlines for America, as I mentioned, the airlines industry, trade, and lobbying group. Hey, Sean, welcome to the show. How are you?
Rudy, it's good to hear from you. How are you?
Good. Well, what is the sentiment this weekend around your offices? Is the Transportation Secretary on the money?
Well, the Transportation Secretary and all the federal officials, it's important to remember that they keep saying may. They keep saying there are potential disruptions. They are sort of preparing for worst-case scenarios based on how they choose to implement this. The message that we've been saying to federal lawmakers in Washington and on Capitol Hill and the White House is any industry like the airlines that are moving 2 million people every day and 50,000 tons of cargo every day shouldn't be treated as a political football. We've been talking on a daily basis with the FAA officials on ways that they can work with us to minimize any disruptions for the traveling public, and we think they're going to do everything they can to that end.
Well, looking at pressure points, you've got, at least looking at it from a passenger's viewpoint, there is, first of all, the security line you must go through, which involves TSA agents. Then, of course, there is taking off and landing, which involves air controllers. Where do you think the public would most likely feel the effects of sequestration if, in fact, we do feel them as passengers?
We're still waiting to hear about that from the FAA. So the FAA, what we've heard from them so far is this is how much they say they have to absorb in cuts. This is how much the TSA is going to have to absorb in cuts. There's been a little bit of debate in Washington between Republicans and Democrats on how the TSA and FAA should implement those cuts, whether or not there's certain travel funds or training funds that could be cut that would allow them to minimize disruptions on the traveling public. We aren't we're not getting into that battle. We'll let the experts figure that out. But we do think that there's a way for both sides to work out a way for the FAA to absorb the cuts they need to do, for TSA to absorb the cuts they do, but still minimize disruptions on the core functions of their jobs and to keep travelers moving as quickly as they can through these airports.
I'm just shocked to hear there's a disagreement between Republicans and Democrats in Washington, Sean.
Well, traditionally, this is something that we really have, the air travel industry is probably as nonpartisan an issue as you can get. So every member of Congress, when they're flying, when they report to Washington, when they report to Congress, they're flying on a commercial airline. And we have tried to focus on the fact that we are generating 10 million jobs every year and 5% of GDP and about $1 trillion of economic activity, as well as just we are the physical lifeline. We're the physical internet for all of these travelers who are relying on the airlines every day. So we really hope that we can stay above the political fray on this and not turn into, as I said earlier, a political football.
Real fast, Sean Kennedy from Airlines for America. We got about 20 seconds left. There were earlier reports that smaller airports might be closed down.
Well, we don't know if it's going to be smaller airports. We think there's a chance that they may have to close some of those towers. That actually sounds a little scarier than it is for these smaller airports. A lot of times the air traffic controllers in those smaller towers are really just sort of stacking them up, and then it's the technology and the pilots on board that are actually landing those planes. So we think there's still a way they can do that. Obviously, safety is the watchword, and that's what we're going to focus on.
Excellent. Sean Kennedy is a senior VP for Global Government Affairs at Airlines for America. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Good talking to you, Rudy.
Coming up next,